Welcome to Snail Story, where heartfelt stories are told slowly but touch deeply. How's your day going? Wherever you are, I hope today's story will bring you a little comfort and gentle emotions. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to join Snail Story and follow more touching and healing journeys. Now let's set aside all the noise out there for a moment and step into the heartfelt journey of Damien, Nora, and little Lily. The morning sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of Nora Evans's small apartment, casting a gentle glow on the half-finished breakfast table. She glanced anxiously at the clock on the wall, her heart pounding. Time waited for no one. Today was her interview at Caldwell Secure, a chance that could change the entire course of her and her daughter's life. "Lily, have you brushed your teeth?" Nora called out as she quickly fastened the last button of her faded blouse, which had grown worn over the years. "All done, Mommy," her daughter's voice echoed from the bathroom. Lily, Nora's 6-year-old daughter, rushed out, her lightly curled hair slightly messy, her bright blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Although Nora had tried to neatly tie her daughter's hair earlier, a few stubborn strands had escaped. Nora bent down gently, brushing the loose curls back into place. "Remember what I told you, sweetheart. Someone will watch you while Mommy goes in for her interview. I won't be long, okay? Can I come with you, Mommy? I'll be really good." Nora smiled softly, stroking her daughter's cheek. "Today is very important, honey. Mommy needs to fully focus on the interview." Just then the phone rang, making Nora freeze for a moment. It was Mrs. Lucy, the kind-hearted neighbor who had agreed to watch Lily. But the voice on the other end made Nora's heart sink. Mrs. Lucy had fallen seriously ill and couldn't come. After hanging up, Nora sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. She had already postponed the interview once before. If she canceled again, this opportunity might slip away for good. "Mommy, is everything okay?" Lily asked worriedly, approaching her mother. Nora forced a reassuring smile. "It's all right. Just a little change of plans. Looks like you'll be coming with me to the company today." 30 minutes later, the mother and daughter stood in front of a towering glass building, the headquarters of Caldwell Secure. The sleek, modern structure made Nora feel small and out of place among the well-dressed crowd bustling in and out. She tightened her grip on Lily's hand and whispered, "Remember what Mommy said? Sit quietly in the waiting area. Color your book and wait for me. Once I'm done, we'll go home together." "I remember, Mommy. Don't worry." As they entered the grand marble-floored lobby, Nora couldn't help but feel self-conscious, looking down at her old but carefully ironed business dress. Gathering her composure, she approached the reception desk. "Good morning. I'm Nora Evans. I have an interview scheduled with Mr. Caldwell at 9:30. The receptionist glanced briefly at Lily, her expression tinged with concern. "Ms. Evans, normally, we don't allow children in the interview area. I sincerely apologize." Nora lowered her voice. "My babysitter had to cancel unexpectedly. I promise she'll sit quietly in the waiting area." After a moment's hesitation, the receptionist finally nodded and handed her a visitor's badge. 25th floor. The director's assistant will meet you there." The elevator shot upwards, Lily clinging tightly to Nora's hand, wide-eyed as she watched the numbers flash by. Upon arrival, a young man in a sharp suit stepped forward. "Ms. Evans, I'm Arthur, Mr. Caldwell's executive assistant. Please, wait here. The director will see you shortly." Arthur glanced at Lily, appearing somewhat uncertain. "This is my daughter," Nora explained quickly. "She'll sit quietly right here. I hope that's all right." Arthur paused for a brief moment, then nodded politely. Nora leaned down for one last reminder. "Okay, sweetheart. Sit here and color. Mommy won't be long." Lily eagerly opened her coloring book and nodded. "Yes, Mommy." About 20 minutes later, Arthur returned to escort Nora to the director's office. The spacious room featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston's sunlit skyline. Behind a gleaming walnut desk sat Damien Caldwell, the man whose life was about to intertwine with hers in ways she could never have imagined. Damien rose to greet her, his voice deep yet cool. "Please have a seat, Ms. Evans." The interview began with professional precision. Damien posed sharp questions about her marketing experience, communication skills, and her vision for contributing to Caldwell Secure. Nora did her best to remain composed, answering each question fluently, determined to present herself in the best possible light. "There's a nearly 7-year gap in your employment history," Damien said, looking directly into her eyes. "How do you explain that?" "Sir, after the passing of a close relative, I took in my daughter. I chose to work freelance so I could care for her during those early years. Now that she's old enough for school, I am ready to return to full-time work." Damien seemed about to ask another question when, suddenly, the office door swung open. Lily, still holding her coloring book, came rushing in. The receptionist followed closely behind, flustered. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell. She ran off while I was answering a call." But neither Nora nor Damien heard the explanation. At the moment Lily saw Damien, she froze for a brief second. Then her eyes lit up. "Daddy!" the little girl squealed, running straight toward him and wrapping her small arms tightly around his leg. The room fell completely silent. Nora was frozen, her blood turning cold. Damien stood motionless, his eyes wide with shock as he stared down at the unfamiliar child clinging to him and calling him Daddy. And from that very moment, the doors of fate quietly swung open. The air in the room froze, heavy and still, after Lily's innocent yet earth-shattering cry of "Daddy." Damien lowered his gaze to the little girl clinging tightly to his leg. Her tiny face tilted upward, blue eyes sparkling with joy. Those eyes. It was those very eyes. The eyes he had once seen every single day more than 6 years ago in the woman he had once loved, Emily Walker, who had carried that exact same gaze. Damien swallowed hard, his expression growing colder as he lifted his eyes toward Nora, who stood frozen at the far end of the desk. "What is the meaning of this, Miss Evans?" His voice dropped, cold as steel. I don't know why she said that." Nora's voice trembled as she forced a nervous smile, stepping forward to gently pull her daughter's hand. But Lily refused to let go, stubbornly clinging to Damien's leg. "But, Mommy, it's him, the man from the photo with Aunt Emily." Nora's face drained of color. Her heart seemed to plummet into a void. She had carefully hidden that small wooden box under the bed, the box that held the only keepsakes left from Emily, the only photo of Emily and Damien, the photo she had never intended for Lily to see. "Lily, how did you find that photo?" Nora whispered. The little girl bit her lip and mumbled, "The other day I was looking for the stickers you hid under the bed and I found the box. I only looked, Mommy. I didn't mean to." Damien narrowed his eyes, his voice turning even, sharper. "This Emily she's talking about. Is that Emily Walker?" Nora froze, her pale lips trembling. "Yes, Emily Walker," she exhaled, almost in a whisper. The name Emily sliced through memories Damien had long buried. Emily, the first love who had vanished from his life without a word when he was expanding his global business empire. Why didn't she ever tell me about this?" Damien's voice trembled with a mixture of fury and pain. I only found out later. After Emily passed away?" Nora's voice broke, her throat tightening. "She died shortly after giving birth to Lily. I promised Emily I would raise her as my own." For a moment, silence engulfed the room once again. Only Lily's small voice softly whispered, "Mister." "Are you really my daddy?" Damien closed his eyes, drawing in a long, steady breath as if struggling to calm the storm raging inside him. "I want a DNA test. Today." His voice was calm, eerily calm. "I understand." Nora nodded, knowing she had no other choice. 2 hours later, in a private examination room at one of Boston's top medical centers, Lily sat quietly on a chair, clutching her small teddy, Bear, while the nurse gently drew her blood sample. Damien stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, his eyes never leaving Lily, her pale porcelain skin, her softly curled hair, and those summer lake-blue eyes. Nora sat a few steps away, her hands tightly clasped, her heart tangled in a storm of emotions. Every passing minute felt like needles piercing into her chest. When the sample collection was complete, the medical staff spoke gently. "The preliminary results will be available within 48 hours, sir and ma'am." Damien gave a slight nod, his gaze locking firmly onto Nora. "In the meantime, my legal team will be in contact with you. We have much to clarify." With that, he turned and left the room, his straight, imposing figure as cold and distant as the facade he had built over so many years. That night, back in the small apartment, Nora sat quietly by the window, staring at the city lights flickering beyond the frosted glass. "Mommy," Lily's soft voice broke the silence beside her. Nora turned, forcing a faint smile. "You're not mad at me about the photo, are you?" "I'm sorry." Nora pulled her daughter close, whispering, "No, sweetheart, I'm not mad. I just need a little time, that's all." She held the tiny body tightly in her arms, heart weighed down with anxiety. Part of the truth had come to light, but the real storm was only beginning. At that same moment, across the city in a luxurious penthouse, Damien stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out over Boston's glittering skyline. In front of him lay a file freshly delivered by his private investigation team, Nora Evans, 32 years old, marketing graduate, single mother for 6 years, financially struggling, no signs of unusual income, no sign of profiteering, no sign of scheming. But why? Why had Emily hidden this from him? And why had fate brought this truth to his doorstep at such a sensitive moment? Right before the historic IPO, Damien closed his eyes, a heaviness settling in his chest. Despite all the doubts that still lingered, there was one thing he could no longer deny. Lily's eyes, eyes that carried his very own blood. 2 days passed, each one dragging on like an eternity. Nora tried her best to maintain a sense of normalcy for Lily, but inside, every second gnawed at her like an unrelenting tide. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Nora's phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed a number from Caldwell Secure's legal office. "Ms. Evans, this is Jessica Moore, legal counsel for Mr. Caldwell. The results of the DNA test have arrived. We would like to meet with you this afternoon to discuss the next steps." Nora exhaled softly. She had known this day would come. The law office was located on the top floor of a financial tower in downtown Boston, its large glass windows offering a panoramic view of the bustling city below. Jessica Moore, a sharp, brisk woman in her 50s, escorted Nora into the conference room. Damien was already seated, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his gaze deep and unreadable. "Ms. Evans," Jessica began. "First, Mr. Caldwell would like to confirm that the DNA test has established a 99.9% probability of paternity between him and Lily." Nora inhaled deeply. Though she had mentally prepared herself, hearing it officially still made her heart tremble. Damien finally spoke, his voice steady and firm. "I am Lily's biological father. I accept full responsibility for her, both financially and emotionally. Therefore, today I wish to discuss custody arrangements and long-term support." Jessica gently placed a thick stack of documents on the table. "These are the preliminary terms we propose. A fixed monthly financial support fund to ensure Lily enjoys the best possible quality of life. Full coverage of her education from elementary school through university. Provision of a new apartment in a safe, prestigious school district. An initial visitation schedule of alternating weekends and major holidays." Nora silently flipped through the pages. The figures laid out before her were staggering, amounts she had never dared to imagine in her lifetime. Yet in her mind, all she could see was Lily, her small fragile daughter, who needed love far more than cold numbers on a spreadsheet. She lifted her head, meeting Damien's eyes directly. "I know you have the financial means, but Lily is not an investment, nor is she some asset you can simply fund on schedule. What she needs is the presence of a real father." Damien paused, clearly taken aback. In Nora's calm but unwavering voice, he detected a firmness and honesty quite unlike the people who usually negotiated with him for personal gain. "Then what do you propose?" Damien asked, his tone low. "I would like—" Nora hesitated, then gathered her courage. "If you truly wish to be part of Lily's life, to start by getting to know her, building trust first." "What do you mean by that?" "Spend time with her regularly, but avoid overnight stays until Lily feels truly safe and comfortable. She needs time to adjust to having a father." The room fell silent for a moment. Jessica frowned slightly, seemingly ready to object, but Damien gestured for her to remain silent. He looked directly at Nora, and for the first time a slight softness appeared in his eyes. "A reasonable suggestion. I agree. But I want to begin as early as this week." Nora nodded gently, feeling a bit of relief. "All right, but for the initial visits, I will accompany you, until Lily is fully ready." Damien's lips curved faintly, a rare hint of a smile. "You're a strong woman, Ms. Evans." Nora returned his gaze calmly. "I'm simply doing what's best for my daughter." That weekend, the first meeting took place at a small cafe near the city park. Damien arrived early, visibly tense, though trying to mask it. As Nora led Lily inside, his eyes immediately softened. The little girl wore a purple floral dress and clutched her old teddy bear tightly. "Hello, Lily," Damien greeted, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Lily shyly hid behind her mother's dress for a few seconds before hesitantly stepping toward the table. "Hi." Daddy." Damien smiled and softly ran his hand over her curly hair. "I'm so happy to see you." Nora sat quietly nearby, listening as father and daughter chatted about small things. What Lily liked to draw, her favorite school subjects, her best friend's name. Strangely enough, after just an hour, Lily had already grown more at ease, laughing and talking more, while Damien slowly shed his usual stiffness. Watching the two before her, Nora felt a wave of mixed emotions: relief, anxiety, and something fragile she couldn't yet name. Perhaps a new door was just beginning to open. Late at night in the luxurious penthouse on Beacon Hill Avenue, Boston, the shimmering city lights filtered through the wide glass windows, reflecting off the sparkling diamond ring on Veronica Sinclair's hand as she sat waiting for Damien to return. The red wine in her glass swirled gently, but her face showed no hint of relaxation. Everything in recent weeks had spun far beyond the realm of control she was used to. The moment the door opened, Veronica stood up immediately. "You're late again," her voice sharp as a blade. "Let me guess, it was another of your father-daughter meetings, wasn't it?" Damien calmly loosened his tie, his voice steady. "Yes. I took Lily to visit the Children's Science Museum today. She enjoyed it very much." "How touching," Veronica sneered, her eyes glinting. "And after that? More discussions with Nora Evans about school schedules, diets, or which private academy to choose?" Damien sighed and met her gaze directly. "Veronica, this isn't a competition. Lily is my daughter. I have a responsibility to her." "Responsibility? Or are you slowly turning your whole life upside down for a child who appeared out of nowhere?" Damien frowned. "That's enough, Veronica. You know very well that's not what this is." Veronica stepped closer, her voice lowering into a tightly controlled anger. "Damien, we've been engaged for 2 years. We're preparing for the largest IPO in Caldwell Secure's history. I've stood by your side through every deal. And now, because of one child, everything is unraveling." "No, one asked you to stand by my side." "You chose that yourself," Damien replied coldly. "And the wedding? How much longer do you intend to postpone it? Or are you planning to cancel it altogether because of Ms. Evans and that little girl?" Damien fell silent for a moment before, looking at Veronica, his gaze suddenly resolute for the first time. "If you cannot accept that Lily is now part of my life, perhaps we need to rethink everything." Veronica's face went pale, her eyes flashing with both hurt and fury. "You're pushing me out of your life, Damien, after everything I've done for you?" "I'm not pushing anyone. You're the one choosing how you respond to this situation." Veronica stared at her fiancé, the man she had once admired for his cold ambition and decisive nature. But now he seemed to be softening over a child who had only entered his life weeks ago. Her hands clenched tightly, her nails pressing deep into her palms. "I won't let everything fall apart so easily, Damien," she whispered coldly, then turned sharply and disappeared into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, while Damien was tied up in meetings at the office, Nora unexpectedly received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Evans? This is Veronica Sinclair, Damien's fiancée. We need to talk." Nora froze. The name alone sent a quiet chill through her, but she remained calm. "I don't believe that's necessary. Mr. Caldwell has been handling everything directly with me. I'm not calling about legal matters, but about arrangements. Trust me, this conversation benefits everyone involved." Part of Nora's instincts warned her this meeting reeked of hidden motives. Yet another part knew she needed to understand exactly what lay behind it. In the end, she agreed to meet that afternoon at the Charles Grand Hotel, where Veronica had reserved a private VIP suite. The small conference room was elegant, every detail impeccably arranged, just like Veronica herself. Veronica was already seated, offering a polite smile as Nora walked in. "Ms. Evans, thank you for coming. I prefer to resolve things civilly." "Let's get to the point, Miss Sinclair. What is the purpose of this meeting?" Veronica calmly poured 2 cups of tea, sliding one across to Nora. "I know you're not a bad person. I believe you genuinely care for Lily. But the world Damien lives in is complex. Much of it is not suitable for you or for the child. And how exactly do you plan to help with that?" Nora's voice was steady, her eyes unwavering. Veronica reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick envelope. "A generous sum for you and Lily to start fresh anywhere you choose. A new home, a good school, and of course, freedom from any public scrutiny, media attention, or bothersome press conferences." Nora gave a faint, dry smile. "You're trying to buy us off." Veronica kept her polite smile intact. "I call it a mutually beneficial agreement. Damien can still fulfill his financial obligations while you avoid being dragged into a world of power struggles you don't belong to." Nora paused briefly, her gaze sharpening. "But you seem to have forgotten one thing. Lily isn't a suitcase you can move around at will." She stood up, gently placing the envelope back on the table. "You're not afraid of me. You're afraid for your own position. You fear that if Damien chooses to become a real father, he might also realize who truly matters to him." Veronica's lips pressed tightly together, her cold eyes slowly darkening with resentment. Nora softly closed the door behind her as she left the room, her heart pounding. She knew the real storm was still ahead, but for the first time she also knew she would not back down. Just days after the storm with Veronica had yet to settle, Nora found herself facing a new confrontation. This time from the most powerful woman in the Caldwell family, Madeline Caldwell, Damien's mother. News of Lily's existence had begun to creep onto financial headlines, with only weeks remaining before Caldwell secures historic IPO. Sensational headlines such as "Young CEO's secret child emerges days before," "Wedding and love child or family scandal," flooded online platforms. Nora shut her phone after reading the articles, taking a deep breath as she tried to shield Lily from the whispers and rumors. But that very morning, as she was getting Lily ready for school, a sleek black car parked directly in front of their small apartment. The window rolled down, and the chauffeur bowed slightly. "Ms. Evans, Mrs. Madeline Caldwell requests the pleasure of your company, and Lily's, for tea this morning." Nora blinked, hesitating. "She invited Lily as well?" "Yes, ma'am." The Bentley drove them through the old affluent neighborhoods of West Boston, pulling into the Caldwell estate, a neoclassical mansion framed by vibrant autumn maple trees lining the grand driveway. Madeline Caldwell was already waiting in the drawing room, elegant in a sea-green silk dress. Her hair was perfectly pinned up her face composed with the sharp grace of a woman who had long commanded a vast financial empire. "Welcome, Ms. Evans, and this must be Lily." She bent down slightly, offering the child a gentle smile. "Hello, Lily. Do you like macarons?" Lily glanced up at Nora, who nodded encouragingly, before replying politely, "Yes, ma'am. I like strawberry." Madeline nodded softly and gestured for the butler to serve tea and pastries. For the first few minutes, the atmosphere was far warmer than Nora had expected. Madeline asked Lily gentle questions about school, her drawings, and the science projects she enjoyed. Lily quickly adapted to the kind attention, her bright eyes gleaming as she proudly described her recently finished mini-volcano project for applied science class, while Lily was distracted, admiring the rare orchid collection in the corner of the room. Madeline smoothly shifted the conversation. "Ms. Evans, Damien has told me quite a bit about you." Nora sat up straight, composed. "Ma'am, I'm sure what you've heard has many different shades." Madeline smiled, her gaze revealing the careful calculation behind her poise. "I won't deny that Lily's presence has made things complicated, especially with Caldwell secure at such a critical juncture, but I also cannot deny that the child is, in fact, my own flesh and blood." Nora detected the subtle conflict in her tone, both caution and reluctant acceptance intertwined. "Madeline," continued, her voice lowering, "let me be candid. Damien has carried the weight of this entire family from a young age. Every personal event becomes a double-edged sword for his career and reputation." Nora maintained her calm gaze. "Mrs. Caldwell, I understand your concerns, but for me, the only thing that matters is Lily's happiness and safety. I have no desire to insert myself into your world of power. I simply want my daughter to grow up loved by both her parents." Madeline paused for a moment as though weighing Nora's words. At last her eyes softened, if only slightly. "You care for the child as your own. I won't dispute that. What I need from you is a commitment that this situation will not be exploited to manipulate Damien or damage the company. I expect nothing from Damien but his role as Lily's father, and I expect nothing from Caldwell. Secure except the respect my daughter deserves." Nora spoke calmly, yet with unshakable conviction. Madeline studied her for a few more seconds, then, quite unexpectedly, allowed a rare smile to form. "Then, perhaps, we might find some common ground going forward." At that moment, Lily ran back to her mother, wrapping her arms around Nora's waist. "Mommy," Grandma Madeline said, "I can visit the orchid garden next time." Madeline gently stroked Lily's soft curls, her eyes flickering with a warmth uncharacteristic of her usual cold demeanor. "If your mother agrees, of course, my dear." As they left the Caldwell estate, Nora listened to Lily excitedly chatter about the flowers she had just learned, feeling both a strange sense of relief and guarded caution. The power dynamics within Damien's family were far from simple, but, at least for now, she had gained a temporary ally. From afar, in the Caldwell secure office, Damien stood before the towering glass windows, gazing out toward his family's mansion. He knew, from this very moment, his mother had officially entered the game. In the grand conference room on the 48th floor of Caldwell Secure headquarters, the soft sound of pages turning and pens tapping against the polished walnut table filled the air. Every board member was present. On the large screen, the numbers continued to show record highs, revenue up 24% for the last quarter, a pending government contract nearing signature, and the IPO scheduled for next month. But no one was here to discuss the numbers today. Standing by the glass window, Damien silently gazed down at Boston glowing under the autumn sun, his expression sharper than ever. He knew full well what today's meeting was about. Bernard Collins, the board's eldest member and once his late father's right hand, opened the meeting with his deliberate, weighty voice. "Damien, as always, the financial metrics are impressive. No one here doubts your management capabilities. But—" Bernard paused for a moment, glancing around the boardroom before continuing. "What many shareholders are concerned about are the personal matters surrounding you, especially with the IPO just around the corner." Damien turned, his eyes calm. My personal life has no bearing on this company's performance. I trust the reports in front of you make that abundantly clear. Catherine Zhao, Regional Operations Director for Asia, spoke gently, yet sharply. That may be true, but the media doesn't simply publish figures. They're speculating about an illegitimate child, about a postponed wedding, about internal power instability. Bernard added, and more importantly, the strategic investors about to pour billions into the IPO are highly sensitive to anything that could affect stock value in the first weeks of trading. Damien drew a deep breath and stood tall. I won't hide anything. Yes, I recently discovered I have a 6-year-old daughter. And yes, my wedding with Veronica Sinclair has been postponed indefinitely. But that is a private decision between two adults. From the far end of the table, Harold Sinclair, Veronica's father and one of the key strategic shareholders, chimed in, his thin smile laced with intent. Damien, you know very well, in business, personal stability carries market value. A CEO with a clean personal life builds market confidence. Damien's eyes remained cold, his voice dropping, each word clear and deliberate. If shareholders only trust a CEO who conceals the truth, then Caldwell Secure wouldn't be where it is today. I'm only concerned, Harold spoke slowly, that as rumors spread, that young woman, Ms. Evans, will become a target for media scrutiny. And when that happens, confidence becomes more than just quarterly profit. The air grew heavier. Damien looked at each board member one by one before his eyes settled on Bernard, the mentor he had long respected like a teacher. I will protect my daughter, and I will not sacrifice her on the altar of market perception. Caldwell Secure was built on competence, not a fabricated picture-perfect family. Anyone here who doubts that is free to reevaluate their shares. The room fell silent. Bernard slowly removed his glasses, running his hand along the wooden table. You remind me of your father more than I thought, Damien. He looked up, offering a rare smile. I do not question your choices, but be ready for even harsher trials ahead. Out there, the market shows no mercy to those who defy the safe trajectory. Damien nodded slightly. I'm ready. As the meeting adjourned, Harold Sinclair deliberately held Damien back. Damien, you're playing with fire. Breaking off the engagement with Veronica is as good as insulting my entire family. Damien replied coldly, his eyes as sharp as steel. I will own every decision I make, including ending a relationship built solely on business strategy, which you've been so eager to preserve. Harold narrowed his eyes, his tone tightening. Have you forgotten who stood behind that government contract you just signed? I've never forgotten who helped me, but I also haven't forgotten who tried to control me. With that, Damien turned and walked away, leaving Harold standing there, his face darkened with fury. That evening, back in her small apartment, Nora had just tucked Lily into bed when her phone rang. It was Damien. Tough meeting? Nora asked, her voice warm. Not just tough, it was a test of resolve. But Damien paused for a moment. I think I've just crossed the hardest threshold. On the other end of the line, Nora smiled softly. Though she had no idea what lay ahead, one thing was becoming clearer than ever. This man was beginning to change. Late afternoon, the golden rays of sunset stretched across the towering windows of the luxurious penthouse, a place that, for the past 2 years, had once been the dream home Veronica and Damien envisioned together. But today there was no longer any of that glittering glow. Only a heavy silence filled the vast room. Veronica sat by the bar, swirling a glass of wine in her hand. Her gaze fixated on the unfinished wedding photo resting on the table, a perfectly posed image of the two of them smiling for the camera, a fabricated image that even she could no longer believe in. The door opened. Damien entered, his face weary but his eyes calm. We need to talk, he began, cutting straight to the point. So it's finally time, huh? Veronica let out a dry laugh, setting her glass down, her eyes sharp as razors. Let me guess. You're here to announce your newfound clarity, aren't you? Damien stood facing her, his blue eyes steady with resolve. Veronica, I won't keep you in a relationship we both know is no longer right, Veronica scoffed, her voice slicing like a thin blade. No longer right? Or never right to begin? With? The difference is, back then, you needed me. You needed the Sinclair name for the IPO. You needed me to complete the perfect image of a successful CEO. Damien didn't deny it. He looked at her with disarming honesty. Yes, I once chose what was convenient, but not anymore. I have a daughter, a little girl whose eyes remind me every day of what truly matters. And Nora Evans, of course, Veronica's voice cracked for the first time, filled more with bitterness than arrogance. You think I haven't noticed how your eyes change every time you mention her and that child? Damien's hands clenched slightly, but he maintained his calm. What's between me and Nora isn't the only reason. You and I? We've reached the end. Sure, we could still throw a lavish wedding, grace the pages of financial magazines with flawless photos, but it would be nothing more than an empty contract. You deserve someone who genuinely loves you. Veronica rose from her seat, her voice catching. I was by your side when you only controlled half of Caldwell Secure. I was there building your image, negotiating deals, enduring board pressures, and now, just because of one child suddenly appearing, everything falls apart? No. Damien shook his head gently. It's because of everything you just listed that I don't want you to suffer through a forced marriage. Both of us deserve real happiness, not roles in a script we no longer believe in. Veronica bit her lip, her eyes glistening but refusing to let tears fall. Finally, she removed the exquisite engagement ring from her finger, placing it onto the glass table between them. The sharp clink of metal on glass echoed like a final punctuation. Mark, you're right. We both deserve the truth. But trust me, Damien, her voice lowered into a quiet warning. The decisions you make today will come with a heavy price in the world you live in. She stepped toward the door, pausing for one last glance. Good luck with your new family. The door closed behind Veronica, leaving Damien standing alone in the vast, empty space. For the first time in a very long while, he felt a sense of relief, and at the same time, the full weight of the choice he had just made. The next morning, Nora was preparing breakfast for Lily when the phone rang. It was Damien. I know it's a bit early, but Damien's voice carried an unfamiliar hesitation. I just officially ended my engagement with Veronica. Nora paused for a few seconds. I knew this day would come eventually, but are you okay? Damien exhaled softly, then chuckled lightly. Better than I've been in a long time. I no longer have to juggle between two worlds. Now I just want to focus on the world I truly care about. My daughter and you. Nora smiled, her voice gentle. Perhaps we're finally starting an entirely new chapter, aren't we? We are. But this time, no more calculations, just honesty. From behind, Lily came running out, still munching on a piece of toast. Who's calling, Mommy? Nora gently smoothed her daughter's curls. It's your daddy. What did Daddy say? Lily's eyes sparkled. He said, he'll be spending a lot more time with you very soon. Lily squealed and bounced like a little sparrow. Nora watched her and whispered silently in her heart, At last, peace is finally knocking on our door. This Boston winter was colder than most. The icy wind sweeping in from the Charles River cut sharply through the old streets, carrying the salty tang of the sea and the crisp bite of snow. But inside Nora's small apartment, warmth was slowly filling every corner, as Damien began to appear more and more in the lives of mother and daughter. At first, Damien and Lily's meetings followed the schedule they had agreed upon, alternating. Weekends, daytime visits, always with Nora present, but soon things started to shift, not because of any formal agreement, but because of a natural bond that was quietly forming. Shall I take you to the library today? Damien crouched down to Lily's eye level. His eyes lit up with a patience he never knew he had. Really? You'll sit through children's books with me? Lily giggled, covering her mouth. I've even been trying to memorize all those dinosaur names you love. Damien pulled a dramatic face, making her burst into laughter. From the kitchen, Nora watched, her heart swelling with a tenderness she couldn't quite put into words. Damien was slowly learning how to tie Lily's shoes, how to navigate her little outbursts, even how to keep up with her ever-changing list of favorite meals, which shifted weekly. A month later, when Lily's trial classes began at Wellington Academy, the prestigious school Damien hoped for her, Nora couldn't hide her worry. I still fear it might be too unfamiliar for her. Her friends, her teachers, everything she knows is at that little public school she's used to. I understand, Damien said softly, sitting across from her, but you've seen her natural gift for science. Wellington has a mini laboratory just for their elementary STEM program. She'll be exposed to things we could only dream of before. Nora thought for a moment before nodding slightly. As long as Lily is happy, I'll consider it. After her very first trial day, Lily ran toward them as school let out, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her eyes sparkling. Mommy, Daddy, I love it here. They gave us tiny lab coats, and we even got our own microscopes. Nora looked at Damien. They smiled together. For the first time, there was no debate about what was best for their daughter. Everything simply fell into place, exactly as it should. As winter slowly gave way to spring, their life as a trio settled into a steady, comforting rhythm. Damien began adjusting his work schedule, something he once considered impossible. Nights consumed by merger files were slowly replaced with simple dinners with Nora and Lily. Hours spent building solar system models together, or simply listening to Lily excitedly talk about her first essay that earned an A+. The small apartment, once Nora's place of anxious refuge for years, now overflowed with the laughter of a child and the warmth of a real father's presence. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Damien sat on the small sofa, watching Nora as she carefully stacked Lily's school books on the desk. You know something? Damien spoke softly. I never thought I would have a real family. Nora turned around, her gaze gentle. And now? Damien smiled faintly. Now I only hope I can learn how to hold on to this. Long enough and well enough. Nora moved. Closer, sitting beside him, her voice a whisper. I believe you can. No one is born knowing how to be a perfect father, Damien, but you're already doing better than most. Damien took her hand, gripping it gently. Thank you for opening the door and letting me in, and for believing in me. Nora smiled. In that brief moment, they were no longer two people from two separate worlds. They were simply two souls quietly meeting at the calmest crossing point in their lives. Yet, they both knew the real tests were not over. Elsewhere in the city, secret meetings continued behind closed doors, silent schemes unfolding beneath the velvet curtains of the financial world. And Damien was well aware. Behind Harold Sinclair's polished, courteous smile, Veronica's father lurked deeper calculations than ever before. But this time, he was no longer alone. Boston in late spring was draped in a soft, gentle sunlight. Cherry blossoms bloomed vibrantly in Public Garden, sparkling beneath the clear blue sky. Lily skipped ahead, her twin braids swaying with each tiny step. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed bear dressed in a miniature white lab coat, a gift Damien had given her to celebrate her official enrollment at Wellington Academy. Damien and Nora strolled slowly behind her, his hand gently intertwined with hers, as if the distance that once separated them had never existed. It still feels like a dream. Nora smiled softly. If someone had told me 8 months ago that we would be here like this, I would have laughed and never believed it. Damien turned to her, his eyes warm. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from the surprises no one sees coming. Nora squeezed his hand gently, and I'm grateful we were both brave enough to face them, They sat down on a wooden bench beneath a large tree overlooking the shimmering pond. A light breeze carried the fragrance of flowers, adding to the serenity of the afternoon. Lily was now making friends with another little girl nearby. Nora smiled, watching her daughter's cheerful energy. She's so resilient. New school, new home, so many changes. Yet she's always full of life. Damien exhaled softly, his eyes still following Lily, just like her mother. Nora turned to respond playfully, but stopped as she noticed Damien reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Her heart skipped a beat. Damien opened the box. There was no grand display, no candles or flowers, just a simple, elegant diamond, sparkling under the afternoon sun. "I don't want to wait any longer, Nora." His voice was low but filled with emotion. "Not because of duty, not because of Lily, and certainly not because of what society expects from us, but because I truly love you." His eyes locked with hers, filled with honesty. "You're the one who made me realize that family isn't built on contracts or convenience, but on love, sacrifice, and trust." Nora bit her lip as tears welled up, though her face glowed with joy. "Damien, are you sure? Our worlds have always been so far apart?" "Not anymore." Damien shook his head, tightening his grip on her hand. "You and Lily are my world, now. Everything else is just background." He paused, steadying his breath before whispering, "Nora Evans, will you marry me? Will you let the three of us write the rest of this story together? As a real family?" Nora choked back her tears and nodded. "Yes, I will." Damien gently slipped the ring onto her finger. Just then, Lily came running back, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Mommy, the little boy in the park said your ring is really pretty. What's Daddy giving you?" Nora knelt to her daughter's level, gently embracing her. "It's a very special ring, Lily. Daddy just proposed to Mommy." Lily's bright blue eyes widened with excitement. "Does that mean we're a forever family now, Mommy?" Damien bent down and wrapped both Nora and Lily in his arms. "Yes, my little princess. From now on, Daddy will always be right here with you both. Forever." The spring breeze danced through their hair as if witnessing the sacred simplicity of the moment. No walls of status, no schemes or expectations, just three souls who had finally found each other after a long, winding road of trials. They held each other tightly under the clear blue sky, where spring had bloomed just in time for a brand new beginning filled with hope. 6 months after that simple proposal beneath the park trees, Nora, Damien, and Lily had quietly stepped into an entirely new chapter. Quiet, yet filled with warmth. The small apartment that once sheltered them had now been replaced by a charming, 3-story townhouse in Boston's Beacon Hill. Not far from downtown, close enough for Damien to run the company and still come home for dinner with his wife and daughter every evening. Nora stepped out onto the balcony, inhaling the cool autumn air. The late afternoon sunlight stretched across the brilliant red rooftops of the historic neighborhood. Behind her, in the kitchen, Lily's delighted laughter rang out as Damien taught her how to knead dough. This scene had now become their cozy weekend tradition, something Nora could hardly have dared to dream of just a year ago. "All right, little chef," Damien chuckled as he wiped flour off Lily's nose. "Next time try not to press so hard. You've got flour flying everywhere." "But you said knead it thoroughly." Lily giggled, her bright eyes sparkling under the kitchen lights. Nora quietly watched the two of them, her heart swelling with happiness. Sometimes joy came from such simple things: a kitchen dusted with flour, a child's laughter, and the steady presence of a man learning how to be a father, one step at a time. At Caldwell Secure, everything had also begun to stabilize. Despite the media frenzy that had surrounded the IPO, Damien's steady leadership had driven the stock price upward, further solidifying the company's reputation. The board of directors, after much internal turbulence, had finally come to admit Damien's decision to publicly embrace and protect his little family hadn't weakened him. It had made him a more grounded leader than ever before. As for Veronica, after leaving Boston, She accepted an executive position in London and slowly distanced herself from her former world. For Lily's recent birthday, she even sent a small gift and a polite card, a graceful closure to what once had been bitter conflict. In October, the little family welcomed a very special new member. Not a baby, as Lily had so eagerly hoped, but a yellow Labrador they adopted together from a rescue shelter. "What's its name, Mommy?" Lily asked excitedly as the puppy wagged its tail at her feet. Nora smiled. "Why don't you name him, sweetheart?" Lily tilted her head thoughtfully, then squealed, "Let's call him Lucky, because he's lucky to be with us." Damien ruffled her hair gently. "Then Lucky it is, officially part of our family." Lucky barked as if in approval, wagging his tail with endless energy. On weekends, the three of them often took Lucky for walks through Boston Common, past the very bench where Damien had once proposed to Nora. "This is our family's special bench," Damien said softly as they all sat down, his eyes filled with tenderness. Lily grinned, wrapping her arms around her parents. "Because Daddy proposed to Mommy here, right? I remember." "That's right." Nora smiled, resting her head gently against Damien's shoulder. "And it's also where our family truly began." The autumn breeze swept through the golden and crimson leaves, but in their hearts only warmth remained. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nora turned to Damien, her voice warm and steady. "Damien, do you ever regret trading everything for Lily and me?" Damien squeezed her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not once. In fact, I only regret one thing, that I didn't realize sooner how meaningless all that money, power, and status really was, compared to the joy of coming home, seeing you and Lily every single day." Nora smiled, tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. "Our family isn't perfect, but maybe it's perfect in its own way. And that's what makes it more precious than anything," Damien whispered. Lily, now leaning against her mother, drifted into sleep under the cool autumn breeze. Lucky lay quietly beneath the bench, snoring softly. In that moment, beneath a sky turning deep violet, all the pain, misunderstandings, and struggles of the past had truly been left behind. Only love, forgiveness, and a little family, more complete than they had ever imagined, remained. Perhaps the most touching part of this story isn't the power struggles or the fortune involved, but rather the journey of love and responsibility maturing over time. Damien once chased success as a habit, but only when he saw Lily's innocent eyes did he truly understand. Some things in life cannot be bought with achievements. They can only be built through presence, patience, and unconditional love. Sometimes happiness isn't about having everything, but knowing when to let go of what's superficial to hold on to what truly matters. The people we love. May today's story be a gentle reminder for you, wherever you are or whatever you're pursuing, that family, compassion, and sincerity will always be a place for us to return to. If you've made it to the end of the story, please leave a comment below and share your feelings. Every word from you is a great motivation for Snail's Story to keep bringing more meaningful stories. See you again in the next journey.